Hello, lovely podcast people. So today's podcast is maybe a little bit of a lesson in what science can do for us. Ooh, that's not a very catchy title for iTunes and Spotify. What shall I listen to today? What science can do for us, or I was going to come up with some wacky podcast title. Behind the scenes of an OnlyFans entrepreneur. You know, which one of those two are you going to pick? Or is the general public going to pick? Anyway, boring. I'll think of a cooler title to lure people in. Anyway, so this podcast, I don't know, bit of a chat. Really what science can do for us. So there's a number of different things that have led me to think this. One thing is I'm getting my staff just to grab me a few bits of information for a future podcast on artificial sweeteners, because I want to do more than one episode on artificial sweeteners, because the kind of claims around artificial sweeteners are so wide ranging. Even if we just go body composition, even downstream of body composition discussions, there's like impact on, do they spike insulin as a subtopic, and then completely separate from that, do they increase appetite because your body thinks you're giving it sugar and then you don't, so you get hungrier, blah, blah, blah. Kind of a load of rubbish. So long story short, this podcast is just to discuss a few things of how research can be so helpful for us. Here's a bit of a knowledge bomb / spoiler, is science doesn't prove anything as such. What we're really looking for with scientific studies is the probability. How sure are we that X causes Y, for instance? And we use randomized control trials. So we try and control. The problem is, as a human, we here's an analogy, and it's made me think of, if you haven't ever watched it, a really funny thing to look on YouTube. Not funny, actually cool, and it's good for like relationships and stuff. And it's something called It's Not About the Nail. Look that up. I think it's called that. But there's this analogy of someone goes to a doctor and he or she they press on their face. And they're like, doctor, I think there's something wrong with my face. Every time I press it, it hurts. And also I've got a problem in my shoulder. If I press here on my shoulder, it hurts. And I've got a problem in my hip. If I press on my hip here, it hurts. And the doctor goes, the issue's in your finger. You've broken your finger. That's why it hurts. And as humans, we are kind of stupid. One, we're emotional and often irrational beings. And so there's an issue there. Likewise, one of our kind of biggest strengths is this observation. And I suppose over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, there's been certain things, you eat that plant, you die. Probably don't eat that plant. But it's when we start trying to, I guess, go, what's the why of you die? Maybe it wasn't a plant. Maybe the plant was infested by a certain parasite, and then there's poison in that parasite. I'm just literally talking absolute rubbish here, but I hope you're understanding that if someone comes up, the reason is that plant's poisonous, but then someone else, what science allows us to do is someone else then eats that and doesn't die. Well, then we need to test, is that person immune to the poison in that plant? Or we find something else of the plant growing a different area of the world, didn't have those parasites on it, and therefore, etc., etc. So you understand. Now I'm questioning myself of whether a parasite can live on a plant. I'm going to go with yes. But some have been biologists or kind of, actually. Anyway, a parasite lives on a host and a plant can't be different. I don't know, okay? That's not the point. Focus on the point. But you get the point. So often when we go to the why is that an issue? So we, as humans, we observe things and then we draw these conclusions. We can be very reductionist. We just reduce it to the most simple thing. Carbs cause obesity. Carbs make you fat. When I eat lots of carbs, I get fat. Because you don't understand the concept of energy balance and fat balance and calories, etc. So reductionist means we reduce it down to the simplest form, which people try to do. Zealots try to do. People who try to sell you books or supplements, they do this. People who want to be famous and go, it's because of the glutens, it's because of the insulins. The insulin fairies doing it. Buy my book, buy my insulin correcting program. Whereas really often things are multifactorial. They're multifaceted. There's a huge number of different factors that, for instance, promote disease in humans, disease of obesity, for instance. And so, but science is amazing in that it can be so life-giving in many, many ways. For instance, in my exercise podcast, which was 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 podcasts ago, very specific there, you're welcome. I kind of talked a little bit about weight stigma, a little bit about the idea that exercise can be downplayed, the importance of it when it's like, don't bother doing exercise. It doesn't burn very many calories. It's loads easier to just cut calories. But you can flip that statement on its head and go, cutting calories is hard, and you get hungry. And without cutting calories and simply doing exercise, even if you don't lose weight, or doing exercise which burns approximately 200 calories and then feeding approximately 200 calories, and you get health benefits from that scenario. It kind of reminds me of the G-flux concept that John Berardi used to talk about 1 or 2 decades ago, which was different. But anyway, I was just saying, it popped into my head. It was quite a cool concept. It was more about basically training as much as you can in your, that fits your lifestyle, and then eating up to that to fuel that, and then maybe adjusting from there in terms of body composition. But anyway, point being is doing more exercise, doing more physical activity, doing resistance training is really, really helpful. And the point I wanted to make there is, doing resistance training, for instance, can improve. It reduces what's called hyperleptinemia and increases our insulin sensitivity, which then improves appetite signaling, and we might just naturally eat less and end up losing body fat without having to consciously cut calories, which leads us to be hungry, which, there's other issues involved there. It's not completely an inert behavior, actively cutting calories. So science kind of really informs us of some cool stuff. So one of those things is we still don't fully understand. There's this interesting fat and fit, and thin and unfit, and thin and fit, and what's the total mortality, all-cause mortality between these groups. And it basically shows you can be, as classed by BMI, which is obviously there are big issues with that, but overweight or obese or whatever. But if you are fit, then you are likely in a much, cardiovascular wise, you are fit, you're in a much better position with regards to dying of all causes than someone who's, classified BMI as normal or healthy or desirable, but you are unfit, which is one of the reasons I've taken up jogging. People look at me and go, you're healthy, I'm not, at the same time, my blood markers do come back as very healthy. So I'm doing something right somewhere, if that is nothing more than just simply my grandmother's genetics. She seems to be immortal. But I want to still do more. Someone I don't hit 2,000 steps a day. I don't get enough sunlight or, go outside enough. So anyway, the point being is research kind of is showing us that, and it's cool, and we don't have all of the answers, but it's fantastic to know. Do you know what? Even if I'm really struggling with my weight because I'm all for people wanting to lose weight for aesthetic reasons. All power to you if you want to do that. Not because someone else wants you to, not because society is forcing you to. Society isn't forcing me to want to be jacked. And I don't not love myself now, but I would love to be super mega jacked. I said to a friend the other day, there's this famous video of a professional bodybuilder from, I guess, the 80s, 90s era called Kevin Levrone. Loads of you will know who he is. But there's this famous video of him, and he bows on the stage and kind of shakes his arms and his delts and his traps and his arms. He's just frigging massive and cool, but not... there's another guy, Marcus Rule, he's just kind of not as prettily put together. He's just a monster. But Kevin Levrone, not my favourite bodybuilder. My ideal physique is, type into Google, Flex Wheeler 1993. That's my ideal physique. I know, it's unrealistic. Let's not go there. It's not because I don't love myself. I've always been obsessed with muscle since I was a little, tiny kid, and I know it's never going to happen. Fine. I'm all for people going, I want to try and change myself in this certain way. I'm all for people not aging gracefully if they don't want to. You know, if you want to do all of the modern age techniques to change your appearance, as long as it doesn't become obsessive, you know, to the detriment of you and your social life and your finances, great. Anyway, my point being is, isn't it great that if you can't or don't want to particularly lose weight, science is telling us that you can be healthy if you simply do healthy behaviors, which is getting plenty of steps and exercise, and potentially exercising, not just going for walks, actually physically training your cardiovascular system with some level of endurance type exercise, cardiovascular type exercise that is intense. Okay, and obviously you can do high intensity interval training, and that can also improve your VO2 max, blah, 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 all of my sports science days. Yes, we won't go there. But it's cool. Like, this is why science is fantastic, because lots of these lies and myths and stuff like, you can't be healthy if you eat late at night. Wrong. We know that's not true. You will put on fat if you eat after 6 p.m. or late at night. Wrong. You will put on fat if you eat carbs before bed. The carbs will turn to fat. Wrong. One of the fantastic things about science is that we can prove that stuff isn't the case. Like, we can categorically prove. Like, when people go to me, can you gain muscle and lose fat at the same time? Yes. Yes, you can. Well, how can you? Because we have literally shown that it can happen. Is it optimal? Probably not. But we know it can happen. Does it happen literally on a second by second, minute by minute basis within the body? Potentially. It's hard to say why it wouldn't, but again, could you gain some muscle one day and lose fat the next and gain it the next day if it's like a daily thing, 24-hour circadian thing? Like, it isn't, I'm fairly sure it's not. But we know specifically over a period of 4 weeks, you can be lower in body fat, in total absolute fat mass on your body, and you can have more muscle mass. And, you know, even if people go, oh, well, that's just newbie gains, and that's just people who are coming back from injury, and that's just people who use loads of steroids. It's like, cool. But you asked if it was possible, and I said yes. And those distinct groups have shown it is possible. Is it optimal? If you had asked me, is it optimal, or can anyone do it, or blah, blah, then it would be a different answer. You know, when people say insulin, you know, if you release a lot of insulin, you won't be able to lose fat. We know that's categorically not true now. The studies have been done. I'm about to do a post on this week, probably when this podcast comes out. It's like a week or two ago. But you can go back and look at it. The front page is going to be the grey colour quote thing, and it's going to say something like, individuals chose to eat fewer calories in a high carbohydrate, high insulin releasing diet group. And then there'll be some pie charts and some bar graphs. But we know that we know that carbohydrate's not making people fat. We know that artificial sweeteners, this is another area. There's no benefit to me. Like James Krieger, if any of you know him, like, great guy. We've had him speak for us, like, just such a cool guy. He did a post, I didn't see the post, but about dairy, and someone just said to him, you know, you're a shill for big dairy, you're being paid by big dairy. And like, people comment stuff like that on my posts sometimes, just, you know, well, you've just been paid off by food industry to say stuff. I'm like, no, like, I wish that food, you know, I got paid a lot of money 10 or so years ago by Faye, Total Greek Yogurt, to be a brand ambassador for them. I did some, you know, educational material for them, videos for them, and it was like 50% of my salary at the time on top of my current salary for like 13 days work or something over a year. It was insane. It was like, whoa, this is so cool. And I was an absolute pain to them because they wanted me to say certain things, because their low-fat yogurt, you know, 0% Total Greek yogurt is the best tasting, highest protein yogurt out there, regardless. I don't quite know how they do it. It's the Greek straining process, the specific straining process they use, and it'll be their machines or it's their biggest seller. And but they essentially, obviously, would have liked me to push the agenda of we should all be eating 0%. That's better for us. And I wouldn't, because it's not true. You don't have to do that. But I was able to still be truthful. But there are people out there who I was offered a really big contract with, or I was in talks about a really big, like it would have been probably double what Greek yogurt paid me for Quorn. But they obviously really, really, really push the kind of anti-meat agenda, which I'm not against people being vegetarian. And they also really push the like low fat and fat is bad for you and this is, automatically healthier type scenario. So again, I became too much of a pain for them. And it was much easier for them to just get someone who's willing to just sort of sell out or didn't have the same, understanding of what that messaging really was doing. So anyway, James Krieger had this thing, you're being paid by big dairy to kind of talk about the benefits of dairy or whatever, and he's obviously not. And in the same way, I don't have any benefit for telling you, I don't want you to consume more artificial sweeteners at all. I genuinely don't. I like my children not to have too many artificial sweeteners, because as children, I've spoken about this before, there is this issue of, and if there's any parents out there listening to this, it's just a consideration for you. Like I often talk to people who are, fussy eating children and fussy eaters and whatever. And, I see children drinking, squashes, rather than water. But really, really, really made really strong. Like if you ever go to a kid's party and they've made the squash and like, oh, bleh. Like I feel like I'm drinking like liquid jelly. It's so unbelievably thick with cordial or diluting juice or wherever you are in the world, whatever you call it. If your kid is drinking that and then you're like, hey, come here and eat some broccoli, your kid's like, are you having a laugh? Like, do you think I'm stupid? Why would I choose to eat that when this liquid, gold is here? I'm just going to have that. And so, very much not, considering the ordering of, like, if they sit down at the meal and then they take a sip of that and, the sweet receptors in your mouth are tasting that, and then you're giving them broccoli or whatever, any other food. So I don't want to promote the consumption of it. I don't benefit from doing so. But at the same time, I also want to be, one, truthful, two, life-giving, allow people to make informed choices. So when we know that artificial sweeteners aren't causing cancer and they're not causing your body to release loads of insulin, etc., aren't promoting obesity and are, help, a useful addition to a calorie-reduced diet for fat loss, these things have been studied. I like to give that information rather than just scaremongering which is all of the gimps and people who have supplements and books and rubbish like that to sell. So this is the usefulness of research, is that we at least know what we potentially don't need to focus on. And it gives us some great ideas, even if it doesn't give us strong, absolute conclusions that are specific to us and our DNA and us as individuals and our lifestyles. We can at least go, do you know what? Seemingly, I don't need to worry about X, Y, Z. I don't need to be scaremongered about insulin or artificial sweeteners or, whatever the trend is at the time. People making stuff up, if you eat this fast food, it's going to put all of your hormones out of whack. Like, we have the studies where literally the hormonal responses to a, organic turkey or organic beef or a fast food burger from a well-known chain that for legal reasons won't be mentioned. The study's been done. That study's out there. I'll put it in the show notes if you want it. Whoever's time pointing this for me, please find that study or ask me and I'll give you the link. So there was one more thing I was going to say. Yeah, it's just other stuff. Like, again, I don't want to promote sugar consumption, like, or like added sugars or like ultra refined food products, and sweets. Like, I love sweets myself. I make the informed choice to eat sweets, but knowingly I'm not being misled. Like, again, we have the studies with very, very, very high sugar, not a healthy diet. 167, whatever it is, grams of sugar a day in a 1,100 calorie diet, or maybe deficit. I believe it was a diet. And people losing as much fat as a group that's consuming, 56, 57 grams of sugar a day. It doesn't impact the energy balance equation just because you're having more sugar, and sugar's toxic. And there's some gimp functional dentist who's doing the rounds. I got sent his post a few times. Fruit, it's so bad for you. If you eat 3 pieces of fruit, I read it as peaches when I first got sent it, 3 pieces of fruit, your body will reject it and evacuate it from the body, and it will cause, the same cascade of events as alcoholics get. And I was going to do this. If you're being misled by someone who's a functional dentist and you're listening to them about nutrition, you deserve to be misled. And then I thought, you know what, that's not a very compassionate attitude. But just, as me, I'm just a child. I'm just an imperfect human being, the same as everyone else. I'm still winging life. People are like, oh, you're a parent, you're an adult now. It's like, no, I'm not. Just the irrational, mean me. I'm just like, you deserve to be confused. If you're so stupid that you listen to someone who's a functional dentist talking to you about nutrition. But then I'm like, you know what, people don't necessarily know better, so I'll try not to take that approach. But it's just madness. Like, he's a gimp, okay? That's my kind bit, okay? He's a gimp. I understand why, he's got a blue tick and a big following, and he used some sciencey words, so please don't listen to him, because he's a gimp. There we go. What was that? Oh yeah, it was like, me, be kind, you don't know what someone else is going through. Also me, he's a gimp, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And the one I actually read was like, nice turn signal, face. Isn't it good how I like bleep myself? Maybe I'll get Lucy to add in a bleep so I don't just have to mouth it. Anyway, this has been a fun episode on a Saturday afternoon. I just was doing a bit of work and thought this would be it just popped into my head. I'll get it done. Cool. Hope you enjoyed it. Go leave a review on iTunes, please. Please, come on. I think there's only I haven't actually looked at the total numbers, but 500 or so. I should have 1,000 reviews. They had tens of thousands of listeners. Come on. Please. 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 Just go and review it. It takes... that's the other issue, is loads of you are listening to it on Spotify and you can't review it. But you must have an Apple ID. At some point in the last 10 years, you had an Apple ID. Just please. I spent my Saturday recording this for you. Paid people to time point it for you. Paid people to edit it. Paid people to upload it on... Please, just go leave a review. Thanks. Have a nice day. You know who I reminded myself of then? That guy, the train guy. What's his name? Can't remember. Have a nice day. Right. Love you. Much love. Whatever I normally say. Until next time.